In at number 5 we have Grateful Doe. After a fatal car crash in 1995, there was an unknown body found in the wreckage, and this John Doe was wearing a Grateful Dead band tee. People eventually forgot about the case and was deemed unsolvable. The Grateful Doe was an American man who was hitchhiking when he was picked up by 21-year-old Michael Hager, but unfortunately Hager had crashed his van into a tree, and the two men were killed in the accident on June 26, 1995 in Greensville County, Virginia. The unidentified hitchhiker was an American man estimated to be between the ages of 15 to 21 years old. He had brown eyes with long curly brown or dark blonde hair that had been dyed red. There was a star tattoo identified on his upper left arm, and he was found wearing a Grateful Dead t-shirt on as well. Investigators had found Grateful Dead tickets in the young man's pocket dating June 24th and 25th. Due to the severity of the lacerations on the unidentified victim's face, mortuary photographs were not released to the public, although a facial reconstruction was later released. In 2012, another facial reconstruction was created by the National Center for Missing and Exploited People. The man who had originally sold the tickets found in Callahan's pocket did not remember the person to whom he had sold them. At least 221 missing people were ruled out as possible identities of the victim. Investigators exhausted all of their resources, questioned everyone they could, and the case eventually went cold, and his body remained nameless until 2015. A woman by the name of Layla Betts, a Redditor and Grateful Dead fan, came across the case and began researching and posting what she had found online. The case soon went viral thanks to Layla, and she was soon contacted by one of the Doe's former roommates, who helped her put together pieces of the puzzle and tried to solve the case. Layla found out that Doe's real name was Jason Callahan, and finally this case was solved after so many years. Coming in at number 4 we have the Hotel Zaza photo. In 2013, Reddit's internet detectives swarmed a subreddit for Houston, Texas, after a user by the username Joe Likes Music posted a mysterious thread asking insiders what the deal was with a bizarre hotel room at Hotel Zaza. Right when you walk in, it's not a welcoming room with the sinister paintings hanging above the concrete floor, what looks like a two-way mirror next to a bed that was chained to the wall, and a portrait of Stanford Financial Group president Jay Como, overlooking the whole room. Joe Likes Music's work colleague had booked room 322 and was supposedly told that that certain room wasn't meant to be booked at all, and I can see why. Rather than just saying, oh, it's just a weird themed room, the internet did what it does best and speculated wildly about the contents of the room. Some commenters thought the room numbers corresponded to the Skull and Bones secret society, while others assumed that the whole thing was a marketing scam. Vice got wind of this story and tracked down someone from the hotel to get these Redditors' questions about this creepy hotel room finally answered. Cryer Coots, the Houston hotel's head of e-marketing, brought light to some unanswered questions about the themed rooms and weird paintings. Coots stated that, like the other themed rooms Zaza pride itself on, the Hard Times room is just a kooky take on yet another theme, jail. Coots also said the Zaza collection started in Dallas, where our first property was built 10 years ago. Our owners and president were really the visionaries and pioneers behind concept suites, so when the Hotel Zaza Houston opened a few years later, they continued with the same conceptual design. Vice had brought up the theories about the odd 322 room, and Coots states the building was built almost 100 years ago, so when Zaza came in they wanted to use the existing structure. They didn't want to manipulate anything for design purposes. As a result, there are a couple of rooms throughout the property that are more compact. For 322, the idea was just to take a fun, unique spin on a jailhouse experience. So it has an exposed brick wall and a bed hanging from the wall with chains. It's just a fun way to decorate a small space. So there you have it, another mystery solved by Reddit users and internet sleuths. In at number 3 we have 11BX1371. In early 2015, a dark and mysterious video popped up on YouTube, and a Swedish tech blog that created a web mystery and Reddit users wanted to solve this odd discovery. This video was in black and white and 2 minutes in length. It depicts a person wearing what appears to be a plague doctor costume, walking and standing around an abandoned building with a forest visible through the former windows opening in the wall behind it. This creepy video was also accompanied by a soundtrack of loud bustling noise, and the masked figure holds up a hand with an irregularly blinking light. The film did not have any credits or any claims to ownership, and also contained many commonly used ciphers and encryption messages found hidden in the video and its sound spectrogram, as well as images of tortured and mutilated people. This creepy video soon went viral and Reddit users started to try and figure out more about this mysterious video. Most of the messages were decoded by participants in an ongoing Reddit thread, and the images sourced to notable murder investigations such as the Boston Strangler. These videos have been interpreted as implying a threat of bioterrorism against the United States, although it has also been speculated that the video is in reality a prank, a viral marketing stunt for an upcoming film or video game, or even a student film. Many were trying to find the origin and creator of this odd film, and it was found that John Erik Creepiest, the founding editor of the Swedish tech blog Gadget ZZ, received a DVD in the mail of this mysterious video on it, and when he couldn't decode the video, he posted it in his blog. John Erik wasn't the first to make this video public. Internet sleuths soon found a user account identified as AETBK, who had posted it to YouTube. The account only posts on the site. When this video gained traction, this AETBK was identified as Daniel from Spain, and he claims that he was sent this video from a woman he didn't know who told him that she had found it on a park bench. Another earlier version of the video was found posted on the paranormal website 4chan. 3 months after it was released and the most of the hype died down, a guy named Parker Warner Wright spoke to the Daily Dot claiming how he was the guy who created the video. The Daily Dot published an interview with Wright. He told reporter Mike Weiner that he was a US citizen who lives in Poland and that the videos were meant as an art project. After finishing the video in May 2015, he had left 3 copies, 2 on discs in a subway and park in Poland, and the last one posted to 4chan. Without these curious Reddit users, this mystery may have stayed unsolved and the true origin of the video would never have been known. In at number 2 we have WebDriver Torso. In 2014, online sleuths noticed that a YouTube account called WebDriver Torso was uploading with insane regularity, yet none of the videos seemed to make sense. The videos were varied in lengths and consisted with a lot of beeping. Theories about the channel's purpose varied wildly, with some even speculating that it was a government sending encrypted messages for the sake of espionage. However, a now deleted Reddit account had gotten to the bottom of the mystery, linking the channel to YouTube's parent company Google. Google actually eventually responded to the mounting speculation surrounding WebDriver Torso, explaining that the videos were used to determine to what extent the technical quality of videos had suffered when they were uploaded to the site, when compared to the originals. Created by Google on March 7, 2013, the channel began uploading videos in September of the same year, consisting of simple slides accompanied by beeps. It was brought to public attention in 2014, when it became a source of speculation for viewers who discovered it and noted 3 atypical videos featuring jokes, and that's when Reddit came across this and started trying to crack the case. The channel stopped posting videos at its same rate after 624,774 videos as of May 2017. The channel posted a few more videos in May, August and October 2018, followed by uploads in July and October 2019. The channel once again posted a video on November 22nd, 2021. Also, if you search WebDriver Torso into Google, the logo will begin behaving in an odd and mysterious shape-shifting manner. Now that the Reddit thread is deleted, leaves mystery in what Google was really trying to do with these videos, or if there really is a true sinister reason for these videos. In at number 1 we have the identity of the Strongsville Skeleton. Back in February of 1975, 3 boys exploring the local woods in Strongsville, Ohio came across a skeleton and immediately contacted local authorities. The police were only able to determine that the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head and that the body belonged to a white woman around the age of 20, but nothing more was known about this Jane Doe. After the case went cold in 2015, an amateur genealogy researcher was searching through cemetery records in Cleveland when she discovered a listing for unknown white female bones. The woman named Christina Skates began investigating the case herself and uploaded her findings to r/unsolved mysteries and another online forum called Web Sleuths. From there, an artist named Carl Koppelman created a reconstruction of what the deceased woman may have looked like based on images he had seen of the skull. The reconstruction started gaining traction and similarities were made between the Strongsville Jane Doe and a local Ohio woman named Lena Pagano by Carl and law enforcement, which led to her identification in 2018. DNA testing would confirm that the unidentified remains were in fact those of Linda. Linda Pagano was a woman from Akron, Ohio, who had been reported missing in 1974. She had an argument with her stepfather and left home, never to be seen again. Thanks to Reddit and Web Sleuths, this case was solved and the Jane Doe was finally identified, and the case could finally be closed after more than 40 years.
Number 5 on this list is the tattoo artist. In today's world, you don't always need to be a cop or investigator to solve crimes. With the internet and the fact that literally everything that we do is documented at all times, people are more than capable of solving a crime from the comfort of their own home. That's kind of what went down in this case. Ranker writes, tattoo artist and 19th century antiques collector Greg May was murdered, and it took a year for police and federal investigators to prove that he was dead. All they knew was that his former roommate had stolen his $70,000 collection. It wasn't until they were contacted by Ellen Leach, an E-detective who was trying to solve what she thought was a different murder with information about a severed head found in a bucket full of concrete. Once they got contacted by her, they were able to charge the ex-roommate with murder. So first off, this crime is absolutely horrifying. It's honestly the nature of this crime which has rocketed this internet case onto this list. Like, if I actually start to try and imagine dying by a chainsaw, it just kind of makes me feel ill inside. And what's even more sick about this is that if it wasn't because of the internet, the killer would have got away with it. Ellen Leach, however, is a pro at doing what I suggested earlier, solving crimes from the comfort of her own home. She literally is an internet detective and has dedicated herself to the craft. From my findings, it seems that Ellen Leach has been instrumental in not only this case, but in solving 7 other cases around the United States. That is a sizable amount of influence that Ellen's got, and a lot of families can thank her for doing what she does. I personally can't even imagine how taxing it must be sitting at your desk literally the entire day trying to find a chainsaw killer. Definitely not the sort of profession that I could do, but really happy that we've got people like Ellen out here that can. Number 4 on this list is the Hitman. Alright, so this case is honestly less terrifying and more just stupid if you ask me. If you're a hitman, then you have to be extremely discreet. After all, you're literally selling your services to a buyer who will want you to take the life of another human being. This obviously isn't even remotely close to being legal or morally right, and secrecy has got to be the name of the game. That's why it was absolutely ridiculous when a guy, actually unnamed, made a Facebook account to advertise his skills as a contract killer. He was smart enough to use a fake name, so he named this Facebook account Anthrax, but clearly this level of intelligence didn't translate to a visual medium. My dude literally used his own face in the photos of the profile. Well, obviously it didn't take very long before the police got wind of this and arrested this guy. They were able to do so before he was contracted to kill anyone, and honestly never even found out if he was a real contract killer or just a loser in a basement trying to mess with people. Now, what makes this story scary though is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. This was one dumb guy who posted stuff on Facebook, and the Facebook community responded very quickly and took him down. But there are way more intelligent people than this guy in the world who are real and trained contract killers using the internet. Facebook, Craigslist, eBay, they've all seen people pose as other people and use their platform as a space for evil. These are also only the platforms that we're all familiar with. I've never seen it for myself personally, but apparently the dark web has tons of sites where you can literally find reputable hitmen at the click of a button. The internet can occasionally be great and solve some crimes, but don't get it twisted, guys. The internet can also host those same crimes as well. Number 3 on this list is the Grateful Doe Hitchhiker. This is one of the most famous internet cases of all time. What Culture says, in 1995, 21-year-old student Michael Hager picked up a 19-year-old hitchhiker traveling from a Grateful Dead concert. The two were making their way to their respective destinations, Hager to his mother's house in South Carolina, when something caused the Volkswagen transporting the men to crash into a tree. Both died. As Hager didn't know the boy who was riding with him, his family didn't know either. When they came to identify Hager's remains, none could identify the hitchhiker, and nobody came out to report him missing. Since his real identity was unknown, he was given the name Grateful Doe because of the Grateful Dead concert. There were reconstructions made of Grateful Doe's face and a number of small distinctive tattoos that people could work to identify. However, for many years there was no luck until Australian Reddit user Layla Betts started posting about Grateful Doe online, leading to the creation of the subreddit Grateful Doe. Someone saw the posts and claimed that the reconstructions looked like his former roommate. That roommate was named James Callahan. With Callahan's photos beginning to circulate online, his mother came forward and revealed that her son had in fact gone missing 20 years earlier. The police were later able to confirm that Grateful Doe was in fact James Callahan. I think what makes this so scary is when you consider the perspective of the mother. Her son goes off to a concert and just literally never comes home ever. You can't call him, you can't email him, you have absolutely no way of knowing who he was with last. Like, that would have been pure mental agony for years. And as horrible as it sounds, probably the news that he died, that might have been a bit of a relief to her. Even though that's a horrible thought, at the very least, she can get closure and move on with her life. So at least we can thank the internet for that one. Number 2 on this list is the murder of Crystal Theobald. Crystal Theobald was taken from the world far too soon. Her family, obviously extremely distraught, would not rest until justice was served. What Culture writes, after Theobald was shot dead at age 24, her mother and cousin made a fake MySpace profile in her image. They used it to find the identities of a group of local gang members who they believed were involved in her killing, luring them in with Theobald's picture and then catfishing them in the messages. By doing this, they were able to eventually find the owner of the car that had been at the scene of her death, the people in the car, and the events leading up to the fatal shootout. Police weren't too happy with the family's amateur sleuthing, but in the end, they were able to find useful information. With the family's investigation, they were able to find who was responsible for Crystal's death and make some arrests and convictions, giving the family some of the closure that they needed. I can't even begin to comprehend how hard that process would have been for the family searching for their daughter's own killers. Also, it's a little questionable to me that the police weren't too happy with the amateur sleuthing. Like, I don't claim to know anything about investigating, and I will be the first one to admit that I am super ignorant towards the process and procedures in catching a killer. However, you would think that the police should be happy with the family, especially considering the only reason they ended up getting to the bottom of the crime was because of what the family did. I guess the family didn't really care what the police thought about it though, because they needed to find their daughter's killers. Thanks to the power of the internet, they were able to do so. And finally, number 1 on this list is Grandma's Code. This one is super eerie, and even though it comes to a happy ending, still a bit creepy. Jana's grandmother passed away from cancer over 20 years ago. Before she passed, she wrote this encoded note. She left it for her family, but didn't give them a code or anything like that to solve it. Obviously, if the family couldn't solve it for 20 years though, it was a pretty freaking hard puzzle. That's when, enter in, Reddit. Jana posted the encryption on Reddit, and I kid you not, literally less than half an hour goes by and somebody solved it. It turned out that the encryption was actually a code for several prayers. Each letter stood for the first letter in a word in what would amount to a different prayers or messages to God. She didn't say anything crazy or anything like that, just a bunch of prayers to God as her final words. But what's insane and really creepy about this is she was basically talking to us from the grave. If you think about it, she sent this message 20 years ago while she was alive, and we only received it right now. Pretty eerie if you ask me. Number 5 on this list is the case of Carolee Sadie Ashby. A horrible and scary case that took over 50 years to solve and was only ever solved due to the internet. What Culture writes, solving a mystery that's been plaguing a family for almost half a century can sometimes start with something as simple as a Facebook post, and that's what just happened in solving a 1968 hit-and-run case. After going down to the shops on Halloween, 4-year-old Carolee Sadie Ashby was hit by a drunk driver who didn't so much as stop to check on her. The case had haunted Russ Johnson of the Fulton Police Department for years, and no leads eventually led to the case to go cold. On retiring, he took a chance, posting details of the incident to a Facebook page that dealt with local history. From there, a woman reached out to him and they had their first lead in decades. The woman used to live in the area and told Johnson about how local man Douglas Parkhurst had asked her to give him an alibi if the police were to speak to her. She explains that she rejected his request, not knowing what he might be needing an alibi for, but secretly suspecting it could be related to Carolee's death. All those years later, the police department reopened the case and questioned Parkhurst again. Clearly, having a few decades to let his guilt stew had changed Parker's outlook, and he admitted to killing the girl, having been drinking that night before getting behind the wheel. This was 50 years removed, and so the statute of limitation had changed, and therefore Parkhurst actually couldn't even be charged. This was really sad for the family of this girl, obviously, but at the very least, they discovered who did it. This is super real and just so sad, honestly. A girl as young as that to be taken so soon and unexpectedly at the hands of a drunk driver. It's good to see the internet figure this one out, but the best case scenario would have been that it just never happened at all. Number 4 on this list is Sam Whitehorn. Okay, so I'll be honest guys, this one isn't quite as terrifying as some of the other ones on this list, but it really hit home with me, so it's making the list. I am a massive Green Bay Packers fan, have been for years, and will be for years to come. That team has already put me through so much emotional agony, but it seems that fellow Packers fan Sam Whitehorn got some physical agony instead. Sam was in Portland walking around with a Green Bay Packers beanie on. The altercation happened when several Seattle Seahawks fans approached him and started getting very aggressive. It escalated and they beat Sam senselessly, sending him to the ER. Just as quickly as they came though, they were gone, and with no idea who they were, it was impossible to direct the police to them. Well, Sam's girlfriend posted this story on the internet and it started making waves. So much so that the Green Bay Packers organization themselves stumbled upon it and used their resources to post it everywhere. To my knowledge, this led to the discovery of these men and ultimately their arrest. Sports is great fun and it's a roller coaster of a ride, but these guys took it to a place that it never should have gone. Number 3 on this list is the discovery of William Earl Molt. William Earl Molt was a man who lived in Florida back in the 90s. On November 7th, 1997, William went missing, and it literally took 22 years before anyone found him. The case had gone completely cold, and nobody had any idea what the heck happened to Will. Enter in the internet and Google Earth. A technology that literally wasn't even around back when William was alive was the thing that finally found him. William was found immersed in water in his vehicle behind some houses in Florida. Behind these houses in Florida, they have a backyard, and then a little bit behind that is just a tiny lake out back. It really isn't that far at all from the homes, but the water is mucky and gross. Barry Fay is the person who lives in the house that's closest to where William was found, and it was a neighbor to Barry who was on Google Earth when they spotted the car. The police went to go check it out, and sure enough, they found an extremely calcified car and the remains of William Earl Molt. He must have been driving down this road on the evening of November 7th, swerved into the lake, and done so in a fashion that nobody recognized. It's impossible to say whether it was the crash that killed him, or if he drowned in the lake, or if he was already dead behind the wheel when he drove into the water. Either way, I think what's super scary about this case is the fact that this was literally behind someone's home. Really makes you wonder what sort of stuff do I have out back of my home that I haven't come across yet. Number 2 on this list is the Strongsville Skeleton. This is one where Reddit was able to get to the bottom of an icy cold case. What Culture writes, lots of interesting things have been discovered on Reddit, but this really takes the cake. The website helped find the identity of a skeleton based on research that was carried out a decade before the birth of the internet. Back in 1975, a trio of boys found a skeleton in the woods of Strongsville, Ohio. They further noted that the body was that of a white woman in her early 20s, but that was about all they could gather. Fast forward a few decades, and a woman called Christina Skates began uploading her research into the case on Unsolved Mysteries, another popular amateur detective site called Websooths. Thanks to her information and the images of the skull, an artist called Carl Kopelman was able to put together a reconstruction of what the skeleton may have looked like when alive. The illustration ended up looking strongly similar to Linda Pagano, a woman who had been reported missing a year before the skeleton was discovered. DNA testing put this theory to task, and it was confirmed that the unidentified remains could now be identified as Linda. I can't imagine being that family of Linda and hearing literally almost 50 years later that those remains found so many years ago was her. Also too, just the story of the boys stumbling upon the skeleton, like, that's kind of creepy in its own right. It's still impossible to know who actually killed Linda, but being able to give the family some closure is still important nonetheless. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Post-it note mystery. This one honestly really struck a chord with me and is truly terrifying. What Culture says, in 2015, Reddit user R. Bradbury 1920 posted to a legal advice thread asking what people thought of his predicament. He kept finding Post-it notes around his apartment, and given that he lived alone, he figured that it must be his landlord leaving them when he wasn't in. This is a problem because usually you need to be alerted when your landlord is coming into your home, never mind if they plan on leaving things behind like cryptic notes. It became even more of a problem because it wasn't his landlord at all, and suddenly the man was faced with the real mystery of who was coming into his house and leaving notes for him. A bunch of theories were floated, even including multiple personality disorder, but eventually one stuck. It was carbon monoxide poisoning, causing him to forget that he had left himself notes. Sure enough, he installed a CO2 alarm and found that he was being slowly poisoned. If it weren't for the fellow user making the suggestion, that OP may have well ended up dead. Can you imagine being slowly poisoned and not knowing it at all? In your own home as well, where you're supposed to be safe. Then having that poison affect you so much that you're literally lying in this dreamlike state, forgetting everything that you do. This sounds like something written by the writers of Fight Club, honestly. It's just so creepy to me to think that someone can get to the point where they aren't even aware of their own actions anymore. Like, what if this is happening to me or you right now, and we just don't even know it because we keep forgetting? Really creepy stuff.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. Raynham Hall is a country home in Norfolk, England, with it being the seat of the Townsend family for almost 400 years. It is more famously haunted by the Brown Lady, who is said to descend the staircase, with a photo even being snapped and released to the public. The story of the Brown Lady has become one of the most famous hauntings in all of Great Britain, and took on new heights following the release of the image, which was displayed in Country Life magazine. Now, she is dubbed the Brown Lady simply because of the brown brocade dress she is claimed to wear. According to legend, the ghost is said to be that of Lady Dorothy Wapple, the sister of Robert Wapple, who was generally regarded as the first Prime Minister of Great Britain, although I've never heard of him. Although I couldn't really name any prime ministers other than Tony Blair. There's a reason I live in Canada now. She was also the second wife of Charles Townshend, who was known to be incredibly violent. So rumour has it that when Charles Townshend discovered that his wife was having an affair with a man named Lord Wharton, he punished her by locking her in her room in Raynham Hall. She would go on to die in Raynham Hall from smallpox in 1726. Now, ever since the release of the photograph of the Brown Lady, many were quick to call it fake. Of course, with them accusing the photographer of greasing the lens to create the effect, or even moving down the stairs during an exposure. Sadly though, it does seem to be that the photograph of the Brown Lady is merely a hoax, with her eerily resembling a standard Virgin Mary statue that's found in a Catholic church. Before we jump into number 4, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps us out a lot in the YouTube algorithm and pushes our content out more. So if you want more of this, and you want more of me, give us a thumbs up. I want more of me. Coming in at number 4, we have ball lightning. Now, if like me you had no idea what ball lightning was before coming into this video, well, I shall happily educate you. I was simply just educated. Why did I say simply? That was unnecessary. I was just educated. Ball lightning is an unexplained phenomenon that has been described as luminescent objects that are typically associated with thunderstorms. They are said to last considerably longer than a flash of lightning. Ball lightning has been depicted in many different ways over the years, with some quite literally depicting it as a round ball of lightning that can fly through the air and strike, resulting in fires or even deaths. Now, while the cause of the ball lightning is still relatively unclear, many scientists have theorized how they may in fact be created. One explanation, and arguably the best explanation, comes from a team of Brazilian scientists back in 2007, who passed large amounts of electricity through a silicon wafer which ended up creating vapor. Now, when it cooled, the vapor condensed into an aerosol, which proceeded to glow when recombined with oxygen, leading to balls of electricity which were said to bounce around like tiny little beans. So what scientists can theorize is that ball lightning may very well be created when regular lightning strikes quartz or silica-rich ground such as sand. This in turn creates little balls of lightning, so you're not entirely safe. Sorry. Coming in at number 3, we have the Nazca Lines of Peru. In the Nazca Desert in southern Peru exists something called the Nazca Line, which are very large geoglyphs made in the soil. Originally discovered back in the 1930s, the Nazca Lines are estimated to be around 275 meters across, and made from shallow lines that were dug into the ground. Of course, no one understands how they got there or who made them, with some speculating that they have some religious significance to the Nazca culture. Now, what prompted major debate about the Nazca Lines was how they were in fact created, considering between 500 BCE and 500 CE, planes weren't really a thing. So how could the Nazca people have seen what they were doing? Now some, including author Jim Woodman, believe that they could have done this via a hot air balloon, with someone from up above yelling directions down to the diggers below. Woodman even went on to test this theory with a hot air balloon made from materials they would have had back then. The only problem was, they couldn't confirm whether the Nazca people knew what balloons were. And that's a fair point, they probably didn't. However, the mystery may have finally been solved. Wooden stakes were discovered at the site, dating back to the Nazca period, allowing researchers to theorize that the Nazca people at the time may have drawn lines by using long ropes between stakes, which is pretty damn cool if you ask me. Coming in at number 2, we have spontaneous human combustion. Have you ever been so enraged by something that's happened to you that you start to get hot? You feel like if you were to get any more angry, you might burst, or even burst into flames. Well, according to some reports, this has happened to people. Spontaneous human combustion was first referenced in the 1600s and described the concept of the combustion of a living human body without an apparent external source of ignition, aka people just bursting into flames without any fire or match nearby. Now, this is merely a phenomenon, however, cases of human combustion have been reported, as well as it appearing in literature. There ended up being enough reports of these random combustion cases that people were forced to further investigate. And of course, it turned out that some of these claims were wildly exaggerated. I mean, as we know, the human body is made up of mostly water, making it near impossible for us to actually burst into flames. Not to mention, any pictures of these incidents that surfaced showed the victim near a source of heat or flame, in most cases, a fireplace. Other theories as to why these combustion cases took place were clothing catching on fire or being accidentally set on fire. There is, for the most part, a rhyme and reason for everything in life, including this, so don't fret, you won't be spontaneously bursting into flames anytime soon. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have the face on Mars. Back on August 20th of 1975, something bizarre was discovered on the surface of Mars that had baffled folk for years. On that day, NASA launched its Viking 1 spacecraft, with the ultimate goal being to find out if there was, in fact, life on Mars. During this time, the craft circled the planet, snapping hundreds of photos of possible landing sites for its sister ship Viking 2. However, during the picture process, something unsettling was discovered, a shadowy likeness of a human face, estimated to be nearly 2 miles from top to bottom. It seemed to resemble a giant head staring back at the spacecraft. Since NASA released the pictures to the world, the face has since become a pop icon, with it appearing in Hollywood films, books, magazines, and even talk shows. Many folks out there, of course, took this as confirmation that there was in fact life on Mars. Meanwhile, others believed there was some kind of ancient civilization on Mars. However, I hate to break it to the theorists who believe something extraterrestrial was at play here, but back in the 90s, when a camera crew for NASA flew across the planet, the team snapped thousands of pictures, once again with people anxiously waiting to find out if the formation was in fact a human head or something else. The face on Mars was instead just a hill that looks like a face depending on the angle.